story of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' climb to international stardom reads more like a thriller than a record company biog. On the way to producing multi-million selling albums like Blood Sugar Sex Magik, Californication, and the latest, By the Way, the band has paid a high price. Today, Anthony Kiedis, Flea, John Frusciante, and Chad Smith comprise one of the most popular bands on the planet, but only two of those were in the original four, who first put the band together back in LA in 1983. The two others then were drummer Jack Irons and guitarist Hillel Slovak, who died from an accidental drugs overdose in 1988 when still only 26. The others too have stories to tell, so much so that one magazine described their story recently as the greatest rock and roll story ever. The drama was of course never intended. The Red Hot Chili Peppers started life as a fun band under the name Tony Flo and the miraculous, majestic Masters of Mayhem. Back then, no one could have envisaged just how much mayhem there would be.
Well, I didn't want to be in a band. It was kind of an accident, and I don't know that I really joined the band so much as we just all kind of walked into the same room at the same time. And I remember the inspiration was a friend of ours by the name of Gary Allen, who was this flamboyant, joyful black gay man who fronted a band called The Neighbors' Voices. It was a really cool kind of progressive French rock band living in Hollywood, and they had a show, and they wanted us to open for them with me singing. Basically, this band at the time called What Is This, with Flea, Hillel, and Jack Irons on drums. But just instead of having the normal singer sing, well, let's let Anthony have a crack at fronting the band. And so we did it as kind of a spoof. And we wrote a song, and it was a really kind of fun song to play, and we went and we played one song opening for this band, and we never really discussed it afterwards. It felt so good that we knew that we had a band at that point, and we just kept kind of marching forward from that night to this night.
I didn't necessarily always want to be in a rock and roll band, but I always wanted to play music, that's for sure. Well, I wanted to play music from the age of around 10 years old. Yeah, I was pretty set on playing music. Even though I never have really thought in the long term, and I still don't really think in the long term. It's always just sort of one day sets up the next, and whatever happens, happens. But I always wanted to play music. It always seemed like the best idea to me. We
were committed, convicted, passionate, totally consumed with the Red Hot Chili Peppers as, you know, these young guys in Hollywood. It meant more than anything to us, really. You know, it was the full package. It was our gang of friends, and our love for music, our never-ending love for music, and, you know, the perfect kind of creative outlet in this very exciting time in the place we lived. Musically, culturally, artistically, it was a very positive and kind of blossoming era.
Signed to EMI Records, Kiedis, Flea, Slovak and Irons recorded 3 albums between 1984 and 1987. The last was to reach 148 on the US chart. They were finding their sound, if not their audience.
The only one that I'm not really happy with is the first one. I feel like we didn't really capture the energy of who we were at that time. In particular, we had Hillel Slovak and Jack Irons playing drums with us before we made the first record, and they left just before we made the first record. I know that we could have kept them to make the first record, and we would have really had that initial burst that we had and captured it in a good recording studio, which was one of the most exciting and meaningful parts of our careers for sure. And I think that was a mistake, nothing against Cliff and Jack Sherman. But it just, we really, when we started the band, it was a real spontaneous, explosive event. And to have captured that on the first record would have been a good thing. And I think the first record, we were kind of intimidated by the studio, and it could have been a really important record.
But I think for us, every record was different. Every record was, we had learned something from the last record, and, you know, we went somewhere. We didn't keep making the same record over and over. We definitely went places, and part of that, you know, was because we were listening to a lot of music and wanted to experiment with new things, but we had some pretty interesting producers, one after the other, for those first 3 records. So, yeah, we made progress. You know, the world paid no mind, but that was okay. That was meant to be.
What I got, you got to give it to your mama. What I got, you got to give it to your papa. What I got,
Red Hot Chili Peppers, their slow but steady progress was halted dramatically when, on June 25, 1988, their best friend, guitarist and founding member Hillel Slovak died from an accidental drugs overdose, prompting a shocked Irons to quit.
I was just dealing with his death. The band wasn't really a concern for me, one way or the other. You know, and the band just sort of took its course that it took. Yeah, you know, when he died, it was just, my best friend died, you know.
It didn't stop us, you know, and it shouldn't have stopped us, in my opinion. It definitely hurt us and changed us, and you know, we were never the same from that day forward, you know, emotionally or musically or anything. But I think in the minds and hearts of Flea and myself, it was never a consideration that our work was done with this band. You know, we have a lot of tragedies and a lot of strange derailments along the way, and none of them ever gave cause to want to quit. But we did find a way to sort of make it happen, even though it wasn't the record it could have or should have been. You know, it would have been a much better record with Hillel and Jack Irons, but you know, we did find one of the coolest drummers in the world, Cliff Martinez, to come and play with us on a couple of records.
Determined to continue, Anthony and Flea enlisted drummer Chad Smith and guitarist John Frusciante, a fan of the band who knew every riff and who would prove to be the perfect songwriting foil they needed.
It was a completely different band with a different feeling, but at the same time, I mean, it was so much of the momentum that we had had from the other records, and I know for myself, I can't really speak for Anthony, but just for myself, I felt like I had really found my voice as a rock musician, you know, and the type of music that I was composing, and it definitely, you know, what I had done up to that point had a lot to do with the way that record was.
To me, it's very much a first record for a band. It sounds like a band's first record, Mother's Milk. It doesn't sound like their fourth record, you know, because we're still getting to know each other and still finding out ways of working with each other, and it sounds very, you know, sophomoric in a way. We just didn't know who the hell we were at that point. You know, we had this kind of teenage prodigy on guitar who was just, you know, bursting with enthusiasm and very energizing for the band, and you know, it was a great beginning, because I developed a new relationship with a person that I could write songs with, which is always, you know, a very kind of temperamental thing for someone like myself who doesn't really play piano or guitar, to find someone that I can get inside of and, you know, have them be that instrument for me when I'm writing, and vice versa. So that was the beginning of a very, you know, fruitful relationship as songwriters, and Chad was just this very sort of mysterious Midwestern powerhouse, you know, who never grew up listening to eccentric music, really. Was pretty, you know, on the straight rock and roll path. And something about this new chemistry we found was more appealing to the masses, I think. He sort of gave us that every man's ear thing.
It's hard to believe there's nobody out there. It's hard to believe that I'm all alone. At least I have her love to see that she loves me.
Mother's Milk, the first album with the new lineup, marked a significant development in the band's sound. But it was with the next album, 1991's Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, which included the massive hit Under the Bridge, that the band really took off.
Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic was a huge leap forward in terms of togetherness and just tapping into something much more spacey and interesting than the more kind of earthly sounds of Mother's Milk.
By the time we did Blood Sugar, I grew a lot. We all grew a lot. And we had been together and we were more comfortable with each other by that time. We had toured Mother's Milk to death, and we got in and we just wrote and jammed and came up with stuff every day.
But all was not as it seemed. Frusciante, as sensitive as he was gifted, couldn't come to terms with their new success, feeling he hadn't earned it. He quit dramatically and fell foul of a drug addiction few thought he would survive.
That was a blow. That was a real kick to the gonads. But again, it wasn't, it was a kick to the gonads. It wasn't a decapitation of the head. Flea and I knew that we would go on and do something, even if it wasn't, we kind of had to go back to square one again with a new chemistry. A very important thing to this band is chemistry and the way we all affect each other, and we all provide a necessary ingredient, and we're missing a big piece now. And we went through the kind of horrible period of auditioning guitar players, which I can't recommend as a great way to find a guitar player. You really have to just kind of, dive in the river and pray that the universe delivers you somebody that you can play with, because auditions, Broadway-style auditions, just, it doesn't work out that great. It's comical if you're in a good mood, but if you're in a bad mood, it's torture. So, that never really worked. And then, sort of through word of mouth, we got together with Dave Navarro and kept it together. We kept it together, and it's a period that's not looked at as our finest moment. But, the further away from that period I get, the kind of more fond I am of the record we ended up making. It was a very troubled and turbulent making of a record in some ways. And in some ways we had fun, and there are songs on there that I'm proud of.
Scar tissue that I wish you saw. Sarcastic Mr. Know-It-All. I'll close your eyes and I'll kiss you, 'cause with the birds I'll share. With the birds I'll share this lonely view. And with the birds I'll share this lonely view. And with the birds I'll share this.
By 1987, with replacement guitarist Dave Navarro also leaving the band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers appeared to be going nowhere. Then rumours started to surface that John Frusciante might still have something to offer.
I've been in touch with him the whole time. The whole time that he wasn't in the band, I had been friends with him. Not as consistently and as intimately as we had been in the past, but I maintained a friendship with him, and there was never any bad feelings between us. There was always respect and love between us. Things weren't working out with Dave Navarro, and we parted ways with him, and it just so happened at that same time that John had stopped doing drugs, and I thought he might be interested in being in the band again. And I went over his house and asked him, and he started crying and said yes. We both started crying.
That was weird. Unexpected. Last thing in the world that I would have ever expected. It was as close to someone coming back from the grave and re-entering your life as I think it could ever get. And that's not to say he was dead. He might have been sort of dormant in a way. But the likelihood of him re-entering this band and re-entering my life as a friend was really the last thing in the world. And in a way, it gives me faith in the power of thought and the power of prayer and just those kind of vibrations that you send out into the universe, because I definitely, as much as I had disdain for him for a while, I definitely prayed for him a lot. I was like, I'm not even sure what I believe in, but whatever it is, I'm gonna pray just in case, because this guy's hurting and I don't want him to die. And it wasn't because I didn't want him to die for my sake. I just kind of wanted him to have a second chance.
Frusciante's return coincided with an almost immediate return to form and inspired Californication, the band's 7th and possibly best ever album. Rusty or not, he still remains the person with whom the band does its best work.
He was rusty. His energy was beautiful, but his guitar playing was rusty. He hadn't played for a long time. But I wasn't really surprised. I kind of had a lot of optimism about that. The first time we played, it was good, and it was right, and it fit, and we all had the feeling like, okay, we can write music together again.
When John and I sit down and jam, we come up with stuff in a minute. We just sort of the nature of who we are, our curiosity as musicians, and just the way that we fit together.
We had a lot of work to do, and we were just kind of really, putting on the blue collars and punching the time clock and going into the garage every day and time passed quickly, you know, almost without enough time to reflect the moment of what was happening, and we just went straight into the studio and recorded and recorded and recorded, and it was a free-flowing moments for us.
The band's latest album, By the Way, is their most melodic to date. It continues in many ways where Californication left off, but musically represents a further broadening of their sound.
In terms of the essence of what By the Way is, it's just a continued growth and momentum of what we were doing with Californication. The thing that I think is a lot different with By the Way, aesthetically, is really the way that John wanted to record. I mean, he made a real conscious decision to, instead of just play one live guitar track, which had maybe two, he decided to layer many guitars on each song, and as well he wanted to play keyboards, you know, synthesizers on songs, which he did, and he really wanted to he'd really got into studying doo-wop groups and girl pop groups of the 60s and stuff, and Beach Boys and background vocal harmony, so he really wanted to do a lot of that. And he did it, and that aesthetically gives the songs a different feeling, you know, different sheen.
It's now almost 20 years since the Red Hot Chili Peppers first emerged from LA, and today they are more creative and more popular than at any time in their history. You wonder where it might lead next.
I want to let it go where it wants to go. And I want to just get together and do what we do, which is improvise and jam and be together and show up in rehearsal spaces on sunny days and just play music and see where it goes. And that's the way I like to look at it, because every time we do that, every time we get together to maybe rehearse for a show or whatever, we usually end up just playing for the sake of playing, and it always sounds like songs and new music and things worthy of recording and working on and, you know, arranging. So I'm more interested to see where it will go than trying to force it to go somewhere.
Not that I don't think about the future, I think about, you know, what I'm going to be doing with my life, but in terms of creativity, I don't think. I mean, I just try to keep getting better. Yeah, I mean, whatever I do musically, I just want to be better at it. I just want to continue to focus and to learn and to grow and to not take it for granted, you know, and not, yeah. I mean, it could be that I'll never sell another popular record again, but I always want to keep growing as a musician, you know. That's important to me. Otherwise it would be boring, and the magic of what it is for me that makes me want to get up and go on these ridiculously long tours and, you know, get run down and fly every day and sit in hotels is because it's all because of the interest in music, which comes from that magical, mysterious part. And it's only magical and mysterious as long as I'm reaching for something that I don't understand. Otherwise it becomes rote, it becomes boring, you know, it just becomes going through the motions, and that holds no interest for me. You know, I don't need the money. You know, I have more money than I need, as it is. There's no end to my thirst for the mystery of the beauty that God puts on the earth.
Can't stop.